You're listening to the Veteran Etc. podcast, as there's always more to be said about a veteran. Join your host, Mike Kim, a veteran, ex-monk, seasoned war trauma therapist, and writer, as he shares his years of research in veteran readjustment culture and the meaning of warrior life. Now, here's your host, Mike Kim.
Veteran Etc. This is a show that focuses on veteran readjustment culture and the daily lives of veterans. Today, we're honored to have Dr. Paul Lawrence, the former Undersecretary of Veteran Benefits through the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. He's also a doctor. He has a doctorate in economics from VPI. He has all kinds of experience. He's a vet like us. He even worked for IBM, Ernst & Young, Coopers. He's done small level business, big level business. He understands veterans on so many levels. And today we're here to talk about the myths of the VA, as well as the myths of veteran benefits. Welcome to the show. And can you please, Dr. Lawrence, tell me a little bit about yourself and to fill in the viewers?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. You did a very good job, so I don't want to kind of belabor the point. I think, it's important to know my father was a veteran. I grew up in a military family. We moved all over the world, so I got a real sense of it. I only served for 3 years. That was just fulfilling my ROTC requirement. But having grown up the entire time, I felt I really understood the whole experience. And yeah, I had the unique opportunity to be invited to work at the VA, to get involved with benefits. And this was something, I was able to learn a lot about how it really works from behind the scene, as well as really come to appreciate what the veteran experience was, both good and bad. So I'm happy to talk through some of the things that I know from both sides of the conversation and get really good information to our veterans. They can appreciate, how to access their benefits, because these are things that they've earned by their service. They're not entitlements. They're not gifts. These are things they have earned. It's very important veterans understand how to access them and how to use them to really help what I call accelerate their pursuit of the American dream, right? Non-veterans don't get these things. They've earned it. And so I'm happy to help you figure out how to get the right information to our veterans.
Well, thank you very much. Before I get into the myths, that we can work through, I'm just like inspired by you because I came across something that I want to really check out because I don't know, I just like got caught up with my son, so I couldn't really view it at that particular time, but I will. But there's something that you've put out there that is just like a gem for veterans, and that's connected to benefits and what benefits can do, what a veteran can do with their benefits. I mean, is that right? Is there something that you have out in the internet with that type of information?
Well, I post a lot on LinkedIn about particular things. So if folks follow me on LinkedIn, they can see me talking to other veteran organizations about some of their resources and the programs. I try to explain things as well. So probably I would recommend go to LinkedIn and follow me. That's a good place to start.
That's wonderful, and that's great. Not to just limit you to that one particular interest, but it's great to know that you've got many different topics that I can follow you on, and a lot of other people can follow you on. So to get down to the nitty gritty, in regards to myths, I spent many years working for the VA, and I'd come across certain vets with certain thoughts on benefits. I also have struggled with understanding that benefits. So it's just a great honor to have a real, reconnaissance man here who really was able to be up there and up close and personal and really get the intel. And so I'm just asking, like a lot of times, a veteran, I would think, gosh, if I belong to a certain political party or certain political belief that I have, that could affect my VA rating, my evaluations and all that with the VA. Is that like a truth, or is that like a myth?
Yeah, that's really a myth. Your benefit application, let's just use disability compensation, is, a piece of paper with numbers and names on it. And basically the process to evaluate and adjudicate what your benefits are doesn't include any of that. It looks for, did something happen to you in service? Are you in fact a veteran? So we'll check your service record. And does that condition still exist now, causing you some sort of harm for which you should be compensated? There's really no connection to who you are or what you do. And quite frankly, if you are particularly famous, notoriety, for example, we have a lot of veterans who are Congress people, for example, okay? Those claims are processed in a special place where a limited number of people have access to it, right? You can imagine by virtue of their sensitive nature and who they are, it's restricted, okay? So even I could not see it. Congressperson called up and said, can you help me? I say, I cannot look at these restricted access records. So it's really very hard to do it. Now, could it happen somehow? Maybe possibly. Yes, but the system is not set up for that, really. And at the end of the day, if you're a rater, okay, you're a rater, you get judged on, did you process these claims? Not approve or deny, but did you process? So you don't have a lot of time for shenanigans because there's a lot of people want benefits, a lot of claims to be worked out. You almost don't have any time to wander off. So I would say no, it's very straightforward. What is important though is to have a good completed claim. Where people get in trouble is when they don't provide the things a rater needs to exchange. For example, say, gee, I'm a veteran. Well, okay, we need a DD-214 or your official record that proves you're a veteran. If you don't have that, can't really go much forward with your benefits, right? We need comprehensive medical record that shows, yes, in fact, when I was in service, I fell and hurt my knee. Well, if there's no evidence of that, that makes it harder. Or stated more positive, if you have a completed medical record, you could demonstrate all this stuff, your claim will go through pretty quickly. So politics doesn't enter into it at all.
Well, thanks for clearing that up because, even thought, gosh, man, are they going to ask me who I voted for and everything? And so this clears everything up. Thank you for that.
No. In fact, quite honestly, you can get incredible trouble in the federal government if you actually do that, right? It's called the Hatch Act.
Yeah.
So for example,
I forgot the Hatch. Yeah, I remember when I worked for the VA, that the Hatch Act was at least twice a year. I'd find something tied to that as far as information to be aware of. And so in regards to ethics training. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, that's right. VA employees, including raters and clinicians, they have to fall under the Hatch Act, and you need to check that out if you're curious. But thanks, Dr. Lawrence. That makes a lot of sense. Now, going on to myth number 2 that's been on my mind, and that I've heard other veterans chat about, and that's, do previous complaints that I've had or that a vet has had with like the patient advocate's office, or complaints I've made like about my treatment to a congressman, or any type of complaint that I've made about my experience at the VA, does that make a difference to my VA benefits rating?
Yeah, and the answer to that is no. There's no place in the process where that information would be solicited. And ideally, the folks who you complained about wouldn't even know you had applied for benefits. The processes are very different. So let's go through a hypothetical, right? You go to a VA medical center, you complain about something, okay? That's all compartmentalized in the Veterans Health Administration system. It'll go into patient advocate and they'll look in to see what that is and investigate accordingly. You decide, hey, I want to file a claim for increase or something. That's a whole separate process in the Veterans Benefits Administration. And there's really no reason for the VBA to ask a VHA about these kind of things, right? It's mostly like I said before, get the personnel record, make sure they're a veteran, make sure they have the conditions they have, figure out if they're worthy, they're entitled to benefits or not. There's really no room to go and solicit complaints, or the opposite. If you wrote a letter somewhere and said, I love my doctor and whatever, that doesn't matter. The law is very clear about how you make the decision if someone gets benefits or not.
Thank you very much. Thanks for clearing that. Now, there has been talk, scuttlebutt about just about the forever appeal, that every appeal that's filed takes forever and at least 10 years or more. Is that like a myth, or is that truth?
Yeah, well, here's where we got to take a little bit of drill on this answer to kind of explain it. Okay. So we got to do a little bit of history. Prior to 2019, okay, the way you appealed your claim at VA was you had to go before a judge in front of the Board of Veterans Appeals. Okay, so that was the one way you did it. Okay, and so what happened was you filled out a bunch of information and sent it to the Board of Veterans Appeals. A couple things could happen. There's only a limited number of these administrative law judges, so it took a while. Okay, but here's what happened. Okay, along the way, the board said, gee, I don't think there's enough information here. And they would send it back to the Veterans Benefits Administration and do more work. Okay. So there was some back and forth while people, or the veteran then put more information into it and said, oh, by the way, I started by complaining about my knee, but now my knee is causing my hip to work. So new information was entered into the claim, the appeal. So it is entirely possible through this process of back and forth and new information, you could be in this process multiple years. But prior to 2019, the old appeal system, as it's called, took on average between 3 to 7 years. And you're right, if you did a lot of this back and forth and new information and new evidence, one could imagine you could get to 10 years, okay? That was much more the exception, but entirely possible. Now, here's why 2019 is so important. In 2019, new process was introduced. It was called appeals modernization. And it introduced some choices for the veterans to have their decisions reviewed. So you could do a couple things, right? I'm going to summarize this very briefly. You can find all about this on va.gov, okay? It's called appeals modernization. You could say, I'm unhappy with the decision. I just think a mistake was made. And as a result, you could go, they're called decision review lanes. You could go and say, I want a higher level review of this decision. This is kind of like the NFL. I want someone else to look at it. No new evidence, and I get to point to where the mistake I think was made. Could be a math mistake. It could be something very similar, okay? Those were taking on average about 100, 125 days to get those resolved, okay? You could say, I want to do a supplemental claim. I want to produce more evidence that relates to what I complained about, and again, have somebody look at it real quick. Supplemental claims, again, about 125 days to be resolved, okay? Or you could go back to the Board of Veterans Appeals and do the judge thing I described, okay? So in 2019, new ways to have your appeal heard and resolved were introduced, in part based on the response that sort of underlies your question, which is it's taking too long and everyone's frustrated. So the short answer is yes, it could have happened. It did take a long time before, but there are new ways to have your appeal resolved. The higher level review and the supplemental claim are something I'd encourage every veteran who is not happy with the decision to look at first before they think about going to the Board of Veterans Appeals.
Great. Thank you. That's so helpful because, yeah, especially with different veterans from different generations, they were exposed to different, just a whole different system. So I'm glad you mentioned about 2019. Gosh, all of that, since we're talking about appeals, let me ask you this, sir, regarding all that. Once the appeal, if it's denied, is there any chance at all that, I mean, what happens if it's been denied and one still wants to kind of pursue the claim? What's an option?
Yeah, no, there's lots of options. Let's go through it. You do your claim, you file a higher level review, they say it wasn't a mistake. You can do a bunch of things. You can file a supplemental claim, you can go to the board, right? And if all those don't work out, you can even go to the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, right? So there is a legal path you can do. So you have many, many paths if you think your decision is not right. And the decision isn't even just so much an error, though that's possible. It's like, I think I deserve more. I don't think I was awarded the appropriate level of benefits for my condition. So there's many, many ways you can continue through the process to have your decision looked at.
Even after the when
Right.
you get like if it says that your appeal has been denied.
Right. You, just like I said, you can, and they generally will tell you in your denial letter what your next possibilities are. They try to explain it
Okay.
so that you understand you have, different avenues still.
So folks, when you check out your mail from the VA, look at every sheet of paper that is in there because there's usually in the back of the VA's statement to you, there's always information regarding the different folks to contact and the different departments to connect with. So don't throw away your VA mail, the important VA mail that you have, because there's always information there. I found that to be key for me.
But that's really good advice, and I won't mislead people. Those letters can be complicated. I think they're all written by lawyers, so you're probably going to read it a couple times to do exactly what you said. So,
Right. Well, fantastic. Going on to the next myth that I've heard that you know can be questioned. Is it just my military service, whether I feel that I didn't do enough in the military or that I was like an Audie Murphy type of person? Does that only that reflect on my veteran benefits decision?
yeah. So when you apply for claim for disability compensation, it is about your time in service. Okay. So, you're there for 3 years, whatever. You did really well, you did really badly. So, yes, you're an Audrey Murphy type person. You were hurt in combat doing some incredibly brave thing. You're entitled to benefits. You were just a regular person and you were on the platoon basketball team and you hurt your knee playing basketball while you were in the service, you're still entitled to benefits, right? It's like, did something happen to you while you were in service? So it's really your record. But I think the other thing you're kind of working toward is you get a lot of this. Gee, I applied for something and I got X%. My buddy had the same thing and he got much, much more, right? And so you hear that all the time. And what I would tell you is, A, not so certain everybody tells the truth all the time. Okay. So you got to kind of be aware of that. But two is, it's very hard to explain this, but your knee is not the same as your buddy's knee. Like
Mm,
claims aren't the same. And that's very hard for people to understand, right? Because, it's just the body is just different and complicated. So you sort of really gotta, put that aside and kind of work through your claim to make sure it's right. If you feel something has been damaged or you have a disability, really, the onus is on you to work with VA to explain what that was to make sure they understand it so you get, the benefits that are most appropriate. So again, I would try real hard to avoid the comparisons with somebody else who you think did the exact same thing, because that's very, very hard to actually say that they did the exact same thing.
thanks. That clarifies a lot. And now I want to ask this because this has come up in different veteran circles I've experienced, and that is, regarding the VA and the so-called standard in evaluating each type of malady or disorder. Is that something like hidden in some type of cryptic box somewhere in Washington, D.C., where folks, I mean, is it like Raiders of the Lost Ark where you need to find that? And once you find that, then what the Raiders are looking for. And is that hidden in Washington, D.C.? I was just wondering because you were in Washington, D.C. and
Yeah, yeah.
your
Well,
firsthand.
yeah. So everything about your claim, like your disability compensation, comes from laws. Okay. So you can look this up in the laws, 38 USC of, Title 38 of the US Code, right? Behind the law are regulations and rules and manuals that explain certain things. So you can look all this up and say, oh, hearing, that's 30%. I just made that up. I don't know exactly what it is. Okay. So that's kind of there. And then you can even read the manuals as to how you look for it and make sure, you're demonstrating the disability or the injury exists. What I think you're also working toward is the problem when you have multiple conditions, right? So you say, oh, you're rated for one condition that's 40%, you have another condition that's 30%. Everybody wants to go, well, that must mean 40 plus 30, I'm 70%. That's where people kind of get lost because that's not exactly right. People in a less charitable way would call VA math, but let me see if I can explain it. And all of this is on the internet and there's tools you can do this, right? But the way the VA thinks about it is how much of you is actually injured and how much of you is not, or they call it efficient. So for example, when you have and they start like this, they start with the highest one. Okay, so you have a condition that's rated 40%. That means 40% of you is, injured or disabled, but 60% of you is efficient or not injured, okay? Now you have another 30%, okay? The 30% is applied to the 60% that was not injured, right? That is efficient. So it's 40% plus 60% times 8 times 30%, which gives 6 times 3 is 18, right? Which is 18%. So you wake up going, oh, it's 40 plus 18 gives you 58%, and they round up to 60. So this continual of sort of, applying the next percentage to what is efficient or not injured is the way the math works. There's all kinds of great tools online. There's explanations very similar to what I gave you, okay? Where it gets complicated and frustrated is when you have obviously more than 2 conditions. You keep doing this math all day long and there's tables and the like. So it's very hard to understand. Most people don't explain it very well. Hopefully I did, but others, sometimes just don't want to do the math, right? So, and again, it's frustrating because it's not so intuitive. 40 plus 30 is 70, but that's kind of how it works. And there are, like I said, there are tools online to sort of see how to do it, right? I'm sure there must be something on YouTube explaining it as well.
Yes. There are many resources out there to understand VA math. So thanks for giving that briefing on that topic. And like, what are some things that you've been there. I mean, what do you think did you learn, or what did you learn from your experience as a undersecretary?
Yeah, I guess I'd probably offer you 3 things for your audience to think about.
Mhm.
One is when we talk about the benefits that are available from the Veterans Benefits Administration, right? Part of VA, we naturally go to disability compensation because it's the largest and the one people talk about, because of the payments and the line. But don't forget, there's many, many other benefits, right? There's an education benefit, right? The GI Bill, the famous GI Bill, free college or other kind of training and education, right? It's a very, very powerful benefit that can change your life, and people tend to not to remember that one, right? The other is the home loan guarantee, the ability to purchase a home with no money down. And it's not just a home, it could be a condominium, you can build a home, it can even be a trailer if it's on a platform, and you can even purchase a farm, but not for the farm business, but for the residents on the farm. So there's a lot of different ways you can take advantage of the home loan guarantee. You already mentioned VR&E. That's a very, very powerful benefit to folks who are service connected, who want to figure out how to become employed or get employed in a better position. VA also offers an insurance program, right? A wide range of insurance. And this is important because if you're service connected, sometimes you can't get insurance in the private market because of your injury or disability. So there's something there. There's a pension. You fall down, have a hard time, you're down on your luck and you're not making much money. There's a pension available to veterans, okay? And you don't have to wait till you're 65. It's much more a function of, your financial assets. There's a fiduciary benefit. If you're no longer able to take care of your benefits, the money, someone will be appointed to help you, and you can imagine parents are killed, they serve somehow, they're killed, kids and the like. So there's a really very powerful benefit. And finally, the last thing I'd point out, we kind of talked about this, is VA's, I think this is the only place, but tell me if anybody else knows about this, where you can appeal virtually any decision. Try appealing to the IRS. Hey, I think you got my taxes wrong. Yeah, that ain't happening. but you can say, hey, I think you got this wrong, and you can appeal. So, there is a process to have somebody look at it again and make sure you were treated fairly. So I think that's the first thing about what I call the portfolio of benefits and how veterans can, really access these things they've earned. Second thing I'd point out is, one day you will get old. And so I'm dealing a lot like this with folks in my life, veterans in my life, where they'll say, so I'll say something to them. They say, what did you say? I can't hear you. And I'll say, did you ever get benefits? And they go, no, when I got out, I was 25. Everything was fine, kind of whatever. And I say, well, yeah, but as you've gotten older, your hearing has gotten worse, right? Well, yeah, I was in the infantry and we shot off mortars and we didn't have earplugs or whatever. I say, that's service related. So as you get older, think about your benefits, either applying if you never have, or coming back and applying for an increase, right? Because these things, unfortunately, this is just the way it works. As you get older, things get worse. Okay. And finally, the process of applying for benefits, especially disability compensation, is very, very hard, right? There's a lot of information. You kind of, skated over it real quickly. It's very difficult for somebody to be really good at this if they're only doing it for the first time. But there are free sources of help, right? Veteran service organizations, American Legion, Wounded Warrior Project, they have service officers who are trained on this process who can help our veterans do this at no cost, right? Every state has a Department of Veterans Affairs or Veteran Services. They have service officers who are trained to do this for the state residents who are veterans at no cost. Some even have county service officers, Massachusetts, South Carolina come to mind, and the like. So, and again, no cost, right? So it can be a hard process. Everyone wants to do it themselves. It's just a thing. Sometimes though, and lately I've been dealing with a lot of folks who call me and say, hey, can you help me? I'm trying to help somebody. And I'm like, yeah, get them a service officer. They'll know so much more than you'll ever try to learn in just a few minutes, and give them some good advice. So again, remember all your benefits. As you get older, things get worse. You can go back and do ask for help. There's some free ways you can get that help.
That's highly informative. We're almost out of time, but I'm just wanting to ask you this one question, if possible, because you are just a great resource for veterans. But when you were undersecretary, what I mean, and now that you're out helping veterans outside of that position, what do you think is needed to make things better at the VA? And this isn't anything that I'm VA bashing, but just some things that come out of your mind that you think they're working on, or something for the long term that can, add hope for some.
Sure. Well, the one thing I'll tell you, I mean, I'll speak to benefits because that's what I, really
Yeah.
specialized in when I was there. I think that the process of getting benefits is really complicated, as I said. Part of it's laws, part of it's court cases, part of it's just the way things work, and that makes it hard. It takes time and energy. I think what I would argue for is these things need to be streamlined and made easier, right? And there has to be what I'll call maybe just some more common sense about trying to make it easier for folks to access it, right? Because I can't tell you how many people I ask, hey, did you get benefits? They said, no, it's just too frustrating. Everyone told me it's too hard. So it needs to be, more easier, and easier would make the veteran experience better, but it would also make it easier for the Veterans Benefits Administration to process the benefits, right? I mean, veterans deserve world-class service. Right? Come and apply for benefits, you want that decided quickly and explained, right? You hate being told, wait 6 months, wait 4 months, wait whatever. It's like, we live in a world where everything is fast, right? Amazon, 2 hours, your package will be there. Pizza will be there in 15 minutes, right? Everybody has very high expectations, and there's no reason why it can't be true for veterans at the VA. So I think we should have high expectations, albeit understanding the process is complicated, but doing something about it to just make it easier and better for everybody.
And I only asked that because, I felt, you and, undersecretary before you, it's, made those type of shifts to make it easier. But it takes a while because it wasn't, it was so difficult for so many years, before decades,
Mm.
so it's a work in progress. But at least, you were part of making that change happen. And I really appreciate you sharing those words.
Well, thank you. But I think, as you point out, it's a work in progress. So everybody's got to keep making it better.
Right. And it's also like our culture, our veteran culture, and also society, as far as to encourage people to go to the VA, to go and seek benefits and be active in the process, because yeah, that makes a difference as well.
Right, right. Come to the VA, make sure you're getting your benefits, make sure you're getting health care. Don't be discouraged, get the treatment and the benefit, get the treatment you need and the benefits you've earned. That's part of the deal when you volunteer to join the military.
Sir, any last words?
No, thank you. This has been great. Hopefully a good response. You'll invite me back to answer more of these questions. But like you pointed out earlier, I'm on LinkedIn. I try to post information about benefits, about programs, about resources for veterans, try to make it clear because, as I said, it is complicated. So if folks want to learn more, follow me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Paul Lawrence. You should be able to figure out it's me right away. And, engage in the conversation and ask questions. And if it's something I can help with, I'll try.
Well, it's a great honor to have you here, and I am definitely going to bother you to get you back on, even if we have to send a team out to get you to make a presence, because you're one of a high, and not just high level VA official, just your level. You decided to come back to the people and to the vets and stuff, and you're providing all this information, and everything's changing, periodically. And so you know a lot. And so you're definitely an asset to the veteran community. And I'm really glad that you stopped by at Veteran Etc. and that you're part of the cominghomewell.com family. And so thank you so much for being here.
No, thanks for having me, and thanks for what you're doing, spending your time, having conversations so people can better understand what they earn through their service.
Great. Blessings, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Veteran Etc. invites you to join us again with your host, Mike Kim, every Sunday. If the content from this podcast is informative to you, please share the podcast with others. Give a like and/or post something you learned from the episode on social media. If interested in other truly informative podcasts like Veteran Etc., check out cominghomewell.com for a listing of other veteran-based podcasts. Thank you for tuning in.